Valeria Messalina's story begins not in the public eye of Rome, but in the private, marble-clad chambers of one of the most influential families of the empire. Born into wealth, power, and privilege, she was a child of the elite. Nurtured in a world where influence was currency and perception often mattered more than reality, her early life was meticulously orchestrated by her parents, who understood that a daughter endowed with beauty, wit, and audacity could become the instrument of family ambition, elevating their status to heights few could imagine. Even as a young girl, Messalina displayed an uncanny awareness of human nature, an instinctive grasp of the dynamics of power, and a sharp intelligence that belied her years. She watched carefully, absorbing the unspoken rules that governed the lives of the powerful, which alliances held, which whispers could destroy a career, and which gestures could make a man bend to one's will. Rome, at this time, was a city of paradox. It was magnificent, yet violent, cultured, yet decadent, a place where senators plotted murders in secret gardens, generals vied for glory on the battlefield, and emperors, adored by some and feared by others, wielded life-and-death authority with casual whim. Within this intricate web of politics, social expectation, and desire, Messalina's early education in manipulation and influence became the foundation for a life that would leave historians both awestruck and horrified. Her beauty, described in surviving accounts as striking and commanding, was only the surface of her allure. It was her intelligence, her ambition, and her fearlessness that made her a figure capable of shaping history. By the time she reached adolescence, she had already begun to exercise a subtle control over her surroundings, charming, intimidating, and captivating those who could further her family's aims. Her reputation for cunning spread quietly, the whispers of her early exploits reaching the ears of powerful men who saw in her both a danger and an irresistible opportunity. It was inevitable, then, that Messalina would capture the attention of the Emperor Claudius, a man whose intellect and capacity for governance were considerable, but whose personal naivety and lack of worldly cunning made him vulnerable to her influence. Claudius, though ambitious and capable in matters of state, was often underestimated by contemporaries and court observers. Messalina, recognizing this, carefully cultivated her public persona, obedient, graceful, and charming before the emperor, while secretly exercising immense influence behind the palace doors. In this duality, she perfected the delicate balance of power, becoming a silent architect of her own destiny and a master of manipulation. Her rise was not simply a matter of seduction or superficial charm. It was a demonstration of strategic genius, a meticulous orchestration of alliances, favors, and insinuations that gradually cemented her authority over the emperor, the court, and the elite of Rome. Every smile, every whispered suggestion, every carefully calculated gesture was intended to secure her position, extend her influence, and demonstrate her capacity for audacity. By the time she married Claudius, she had already established herself as a woman whose presence commanded attention, whose mind could maneuver through the labyrinth of political intrigue, and whose ambition knew no moral boundaries. The marriage itself, far from being a union of mere affection, was a calculated step in a game of power. Claudius, perhaps captivated by her beauty and charm, failed to fully comprehend the depth of her cunning. Messalina, in contrast, viewed the union as a launchpad for her designs, a throne from which she could exercise influence, manipulate events, and establish her legacy. Within the gilded walls of the palace, she began to exert subtle control, influencing appointments, swaying opinions, and ensuring that those who sought her favor gained positions of power, while those who opposed her found themselves marginalized or humiliated. Rome itself became a stage for her performances, each public appearance carefully calculated to demonstrate elegance, confidence, and subtle dominance. The elite of Rome whispered about her exploits, sometimes in awe, sometimes in fear. Tales of her early manipulation spread like wildfire, cementing her reputation as a woman capable of bending even the most powerful men to her will. Yet, for all her outward charm and political acumen, there was a darker aspect to Messalina, a fascination with indulgence, audacity, and transgression. In a city where excess was tolerated but carefully scrutinized, she pushed boundaries with a combination of boldness and strategic calculation that few could match. It was this combination of intelligence, ambition, and fearless audacity that would culminate in the infamous night that would etch her name permanently into the annals of Roman scandal. The night she reportedly seduced 25 men. The lead up to that night was not a single event, but the result of years of careful observation, manipulation, and orchestration. Messalina understood that in Rome, stories had power, and rumors could shape perception as effectively as action. She used this knowledge to craft a persona both alluring and dangerous, ensuring that her influence extended far beyond the walls of the imperial palace. Every step she took, every encounter she orchestrated, and every favor she granted or denied was part of a larger strategy to cement her position and manipulate those around her. By the time the infamous night arrived, she had mastered the delicate dance of power, seduction, and scandal. The stage was set not merely for indulgence, but for a demonstration of dominance that would resonate through Rome's corridors of power for decades. The anticipation among the elite, many of whom were unknowingly participating, was electric. They were drawn in, not only by her beauty, but by the sense that they were witnessing history in the making, the actions of a woman who would become legendary, feared, and infamous in equal measure. And so, the story of Valeria Messalina's rise, her careful orchestration of power, her calculated use of charm, and her mastery of scandal reached its dramatic crescendo, setting the stage for the night that would forever define her as one of Rome's most notorious figures. The night that would seal Valeria Messalina's place in history was not an ordinary evening in Rome. The city was alive with the bustle of senators returning from political gatherings, merchants closing their shops, and the faint echo of footsteps in the marble corridors of palaces that held secrets darker than any alleyway. Messalina had orchestrated this night with meticulous precision, aware that each detail could elevate her reputation from powerful empress to an immortal symbol of audacity. The imperial palace, usually serene and rigid in its order, now hummed with an almost palpable tension, the flickering of torches casting long, dramatic shadows across walls adorned with marble reliefs depicting battles, conquests, and deities that had watched over Rome for centuries. The air was scented with exotic oils, perfumes imported from distant lands, mingling with the faint aroma of roasted meats and the soft crackle of distant fires, a combination that intoxicated the senses and heightened anticipation. Messalina, draped in sumptuous silk garments dyed the richest crimson, moved through the palace like a phantom of desire and fear, her every gesture measured, her every glance deliberate. 25 men had been summoned that night, each handpicked for their rank, influence, and proximity to power, yet each oblivious to the other's involvement. These men were senators, military officers, and influential courtiers, men accustomed to command. Yet on this night, they were reduced to instruments of a woman's cunning will. Messalina's understanding of human psychology was unparalleled. She knew how to inspire desire, how to instill awe, and how to manipulate fear without leaving a trace of coercion. The first of her unsuspecting guests arrived under the guise of a private consultation with the empress. He found her waiting, candlelight glinting off her jewelry, her presence both commanding and disarming. She spoke with a voice soft yet authoritative, a cadence that hinted at both intimacy and dominance. By the time the first man left, utterly captivated and bewildered by the encounter, Messalina had already set the tone for the night. She would orchestrate not a sequence of trysts, but a symphony of manipulation, indulgence, and psychological control. Each participant unknowingly playing a role in a spectacle that would reverberate through the annals of history. One by one, the men entered her private chambers, each experience tailored to ensure fascination, fear, and loyalty in equal measure. Messalina moved effortlessly between encounters, her mind calculating every gesture, every word, every subtle shift of expression. She understood that her influence could be exercised not merely through desire, but through the careful orchestration of perception, rumor, and spectacle, in whispers that would later be immortalized in the hushed recountings of Roman historians. It was said that the men experienced a mixture of exhilaration, shame, and awe. Some believed they were witnessing nothing more than indulgent pleasure. Others understood, perhaps too late, that they were being ensnared in a web of power that few could escape. Messalina's audacity was unparalleled. By engaging 25 men in a single night, she not only indulged her desires but also demonstrated a form of control over Rome's elite that no emperor could rival. Each encounter reinforced her dominance, reminding the men of her influence, and ensuring that her name would be spoken in hushed tones long after the night had ended. Beyond the acts themselves, the night was a performance, a calculated demonstration of power and daring. Messalina recognized that the telling of a story, especially one tinged with scandal and indulgence, could often be more influential than the act itself. By ensuring that whispers of her exploits spread through the city, she manipulated both perception and memory, crafting a legacy that would outlive the ephemeral nature of desire. The palace became a theater, the participants unwitting actors in a narrative that she controlled with precision. Messalina's mastery of timing, intimacy, and spectacle transformed what might have been a private indulgence into an enduring legend. The psychological impact on those involved cannot be overstated. Senators who had previously regarded her with cautious respect now feared her audacity. Soldiers and officers who once believed themselves untouchable understood, in a subtle yet undeniable way, that their power was subject to a woman's will. Even Emperor Claudius, unaware of the full scope of events that unfolded under his roof, would later struggle to reconcile the public and private personas of the woman he had married. As the night progressed, Messalina's calculated performances and displays of influence created a ripple effect that extended far beyond the palace walls. Rumors, exaggerated or true, began to spread almost immediately. Whispers of 25 men, their identities obscured but their actions speculated upon, circulated through the taverns, marketplaces, and corridors of Rome. Some accounts painted her as a dangerous seductress, others as a symbol of intoxicating charm. but all agreed on one point: her audacity was unmatched, and her cunning undeniable. Historians would later debate whether the night was merely indulgence, a political maneuver, or a combination of both. Regardless, its legacy was clear. Valeria Messalina had proven that power in Rome was not confined to armies, laws, or the Senate. It could also reside in audacity, in the ability to manipulate perception, and in the strategic orchestration of scandal. By the night's end, Messalina had not only captivated 25 men, but had reinforced her position as Rome's most daring and infamous empress. Her name would echo through history as a cautionary tale, a study of power wielded through desire, cunning, and audacity, and a reminder that even in an empire ruled by emperors, a single woman could shape the course of events with intelligence, boldness, and scandalous ingenuity. Every detail of that night, the calculated selection of participants, the orchestration of encounters, the use of lighting, space, and atmosphere, and the strategic spreading of rumors exemplified her mastery of both human nature and the political landscape of Rome. Through this infamous night, Messalina cemented her legacy, a woman whose actions blurred the line between indulgence and political strategy, between seduction and domination, and between audacity and historical immortality. Her story serves as both a testament to her cunning and a warning about the intoxicating allure of power, desire, and scandal in a world where perception often outweighed truth, and where a single night could change the way an empire remembered its most notorious figures. When the torches of that scandalous night finally burned out and the marble halls of the palace returned to silence, Rome did not sleep. The whispers that had begun as faint echoes within the palace walls had by dawn turned into a storm that rolled through the forum, the bathhouses, and the chambers of senators who now feared their names might be spoken aloud. Messalina had built her empire of influence through charm, secrecy, and audacity, but in Rome, power was as fragile as glass, and every rumor was a dagger waiting to be drawn. By the second day, tales of her infamous night had reached the ears of those who had long envied her reach. Rivals saw in her scandal the opportunity they had awaited, and courtiers who had once bowed to her began whispering to the emperor's advisors. The narrative that emerged was not one of indulgence but of treachery, a story designed to inflame Claudius's insecurity and question her loyalty. What had begun as a performance of dominance now threatened to undo the empire's most cunning empress. The Emperor Claudius, though often underestimated by history, was no fool. His love for Messalina had blinded him before, but as rumors swirled, his trusted freedmen, Narcissus and Pallas, began to weave the truth into a tale of betrayal. They spoke of Messalina's manipulation, her secret meetings, her whispered alliances. The name Messalina became synonymous with excess, deception, and danger. When news reached Claudius that his empress had allegedly held a mock wedding with her lover, the senator Gaius Silius, while he was away from Rome, it was not passion but panic that consumed him. The emperor, humiliated and enraged, demanded proof. And proof, in Rome, was never hard to find when the mob smelled scandal. The streets filled with gossip of orgies disguised as religious rites, of political deals brokered between silken sheets, of 25 men who now claimed ignorance, loyalty, or victimhood depending on who questioned them. Each retelling magnified her depravity until even those who had once adored her began to doubt their memories. Messalina, however, was not one to surrender easily. She had survived by outsmarting men who wielded legions and law alike, and she believed she could do so again. In a desperate gambit, she rushed to the gardens of Lucullus, seeking to intercept Claudius before his advisors poisoned his mind beyond repair. Dressed in mourning robes, barefoot and disheveled, she waited by the road, her once commanding voice now trembling as she pleaded with messengers to let her see her husband. When the imperial procession appeared in the distance, she fell to her knees, tears streaking her face, her hands clutching at the hem of the emperor's chariot. But Claudius did not look at her. His eyes were fixed ahead, hollow and cold. Behind him, Narcissus gave the signal. The guards stepped forward. Messalina's pleas fell into silence. The empress, who had once commanded 25 men in a single night, could not command mercy from the one man who mattered most. Her final hours were spent in the quiet shadow of a garden she had once claimed as her sanctuary. Surrounded by a handful of loyal servants, she clutched at the last fragments of dignity. The irony was bitter. The woman who had conquered Rome's most powerful men through seduction and strategy was now a prisoner of her own legend. The command for her death did not come from Claudius directly. He lacked the resolve, but from Narcissus, who feared hesitation might spare her. When the soldier entered, sword in hand, Messalina's resolve faltered. Ancient accounts claim she trembled, begged, and then tried to seize the blade herself. But her courage failed her in that final moment. The executioner finished what history had already begun. The once magnificent empress, whose beauty had enslaved senators and generals alike, now lay lifeless amid the flowers she had planted. Her body, stripped of power and pretense, was buried quietly, her name stricken from imperial ceremony. Yet, as history would prove, erasure only deepened her legend. In the years that followed, Messalina's story became Rome's most whispered cautionary tale. To her enemies, she was the embodiment of corruption, a warning against women who wielded influence beyond their place. To others, she was a symbol of cunning and control, a woman who understood the mechanics of empire better than many who ruled it. The writers of Rome, ever hungry for scandal, immortalized her in ink. Tacitus, Juvenal, and Suetonius turned her life into allegory, part fact, part moral lesson. They wrote of her lust, her ambition, her downfall. But beneath the moral outrage lay a grudging respect for her intelligence. Messalina had played the most dangerous game in Rome, the game of perception, and for a time, she had won. Her name, spoken centuries later, still carries the rhythm of danger and allure, of a woman who defied the limits of her world, and paid the ultimate price for it. But perhaps the greatest irony of all was this: in death, Messalina achieved what she had always sought in life: immortality. Her story outlived emperors, generals, and kingdoms. Artists painted her as both temptress and victim. Poets wrote verses that both condemned and desired her. The scandal that once sought to destroy her became the foundation of her legend. Even the emperor, haunted by memories of her laughter, could never truly erase her from Rome's memory. The empire moved on, as empires do, but every whisper of decadence, every tale of forbidden desire, every rumor of manipulation that surfaced in Roman politics carried the echo of her name. In that sense, Valeria Messalina had achieved a kind of victory, not over Rome, but through it. Centuries later, historians and storytellers would continue to debate her motives. Was she a victim of patriarchal politics, framed by men who feared her influence? Or was she truly the dangerous seductress history made her out to be? The truth, as with most legends, lies somewhere in between. She was both powerful and reckless, intelligent yet consumed by her own games, adored and despised in equal measure. Her life remains a testament to how power and desire, when entwined, can either elevate or destroy, and how one woman's audacity can echo through millennia. As the night sky closes over the ruins of Rome, one can almost imagine the faint sound of her laughter drifting through the marble corridors she once ruled. The laughter of a woman who dared to live by her own rules, who defied an empire built by men, and whose name became both a curse and a fascination that history could never silence. And if you've made it this far into her haunting story, remember, history is filled with tales that were never meant to be forgotten. Subscribe now to your channel name, where we bring you the darkest, most mysterious, and most forbidden stories the world tried to erase. Because in every empire, in every century, there are shadows waiting to be uncovered, and we will explore them all together.